Hello, everyone. Father Martin Padovani again, back here with some talks that I'd like to share with you that I think are connected with a lot of other things I said before. But I'd like to focus these three subjects here together. The losses that we deal with in life. There's the general losses that we deal with every day. There are multiple. Secondly, there's the losses that we have in relationships. And thirdly, it's the losses that we deal with of people who die, and we lose people that we love that have gone to the Lord. Let's deal with, first of all, the losses of life that are multiple. I mean, it's unbelievable how many small losses we deal with every day. And I guess the question is, do we recognize them? Do we deal with them? Do we just slip through them? One of the things that the human person has to do is to process things. But we live in a very, very busy world, and sometimes we process very little at the end of the day. We recognize that. That's why with some people, I often tell them, if they want to get in touch with their feelings at the end of the day, to sit down, take the time out, make it also a time of prayer, to just think about all the things that happened to me during the day. The disappointments, the hurts, the people who I disagreed with, the people who praised me, all these many things, all the disappointments that just come up that we would never recognize in the morning are going to happen to us. Really, when we put them in a category, I put them in a category of losses. You can also put other titles on them, disappointments, hopes not met, whatever it is, but they're losses, things that we expected to happen and didn't happen. Like we were going to have a picnic today and it rained. There's a loss there. You have to deal with it. We don't always deal with these small little things, and we think this is, okay. We just kind of let them go, but it just takes a minute or two, a little reflection, a little prayer to be able to say, well, Lord, it's raining today. We can't have the picnic. Help us to make a better day. Just that little, half a minute, to be able to take and reflect on that little simple loss is so meaningful. I think you see in just what I'm trying to say, nobody thinks about a little thing like that. But these little aspects of loss like this happen to us constantly over different things. The other day, one of my teeth fell out. And I have to go back to the dentist and have them push it back in again. But I was irritated because I'm busy. I don't want to go to the dentist. I have to go back in. Is he going to say no? Maybe I have to get that root out and put a whole new one in there. Just in that alone, I just came to the point. I said, Lord, I put it in your hands. I'll deal with it when I get over to see him. But little things like this, we don't always realize that the whole aspect of life is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. They're always linked together. The area that we forget most is usually that spiritual aspect that happens to us, because God knows what happens to us. It would be good if we could acknowledge it before him. It just takes a split second to deal with this. And so a little bit of time, a little bit of reflection, a little bit of prayer and talking to God is the wholeness of spirituality. We tend to split up our spiritual life in one corner, our emotional here, our doing sports and something else out there. It's all together. Developing that type of a togetherness takes a lot of reflection and working. Nobody will ever get it all together exactly the way we'd like it. And so the three areas that I told you I wanted to discuss with this are identifying the small things of life, the loss of our relationships, and the loss of loved ones from death. And what do we do about the fact of compounded losses? So many times the people will say, oh, it's raining today, we can't go on the picnic. Then I get a call from somebody in the family, your brother is in the hospital, something went wrong. You run out to the car and the car isn't starting right because there's something wrong with it. These little things, they mount up one after another until by the middle of the day you're frustrated, you're hard to live with yourself. Nobody can live with you because you haven't dealt with them. You haven't dealt with them from an emotional standpoint. You haven't acknowledged the pain and disappointment you have. You haven't put it in God's hands. And so this is the aspect of a process that is called face and deal with the reality, small as it is. Deal with the emotional feelings you have, even if it's a few curse words thrown in. And thirdly, come to some sort of an acceptance of what's happened. Very healing, very emotional, but very spiritual. And being able to let go and then move on. Many times something happens to us early in the morning, we get into the office and we're grumpy because we haven't really processed what happened as we were leaving the house. And a lot of times we deny it, we say, oh, it didn't happen, and so on. People say, how you doing today? Oh, I'm doing great. Well, it's the first lie, because I'm probably not doing all that great. I've got a lot of pain about something. Some of these things we don't have to be able to tell everybody, but we certainly have to tell ourselves. If we don't process them, we build up inside of us. They make us numb, make us less in touch with what we're feeling. They cause problems within ourselves. We become difficult people to deal with and live with. Can you see how this can just mount on and pile up? It happens to all of us. The problem is we don't have that self-awareness and understanding of what's going on inside of us. So persons and families who have difficulty feeling have trouble also, therefore, in grieving the losses that go on in our daily lives. And the loss of the family dog. And people, try to keep a stiff upper lip. The dog died or the cat died. It's a real area that one has to kind of deal with and grieve and deal with it and process it and help one another to walk through it. Allowing the grieving, no matter what the issue may be, because sometimes we feel foolish in telling somebody that we feel a little bit upset about the fact that I didn't have a chance to get breakfast because the kids were howling and I had to get them off to school, and so on and so forth. And sometimes, unless we have a good friend, they say, let it out, let it hang out. People will say that, let it hang out. It's the truth, let it hang out. A lot of times we can't do it, but we can do it with some people that we're close to. We can always do it in prayer. And this is where prayer is such a fantastic, wonderful thing in our lives. But it has to be something besides church or saying the rosary or in some sort of a religious ceremony. Prayer, I'm talking about, that is ongoing in our lives that go on. And so the aspects, too, that we come about when we're dealing with so many of the aspects of death. People in our lives are always dying, getting sick, having problems. The deaths, one of the things that people don't do well in our society is they don't grieve deaths. They let these people pile up in our lives. They don't process it. People are shortening the whole aspect of having ceremonies and cutting short the grieving process. In some of these warm countries, you die today and you're buried today, but there still is a whole process of the loss of the person. And sometimes in the Western world, we would have, in the old days, we would have a funeral, a viewing 1, 2, 3, 4 days in a row, and then we'd have the funeral. That might have been overdoing it. And then, gradually, you put the person in the grave, and you bury your feelings. That's no good, because grieving is a long process, and especially dealt with somebody on the radio on the phone this morning, where the woman just lost her nephew in an overdose. It's got her upset. It's got her sister who lost her son, who is very upset. The family is upset. She is trying to help them, and I told her, look, the best way you're going to help them is you got to make sure you're processing it yourself. And so later on, when we come back again, we'll continue with some of these aspects about the losses and death, which we all have and we need to address.
In life, we are not alone. We live with and among people. We constantly enter into contact and relationship with others. Some of these relationships are very formal and superficial, but some are very deep and intimate. How do relationships work? We can all easily relate with those relationships that have been wounded, which are sometimes even bleeding. Father Martin Padovani, SVD, has written a book called Healing Wounded Relationships. It is the result of his many years of work as a marriage counselor. He deals with some of the very simple but pertinent topics like communications, listening, intimacy, forgiveness, reconciliation, and dealing with anxiety and fear. And of course, a very practical question: how do you make a marriage work? You will surely be enriched by this book. You should get it for yourself, or maybe get a copy for a relative or a friend. Be blessed by this book and improve your relationships.
Call the number on the screen or email us to get your copy. You can also place your order by visiting our website. Do it today.
Hello everyone, I'm back, and I'd like to continue where I left off, was about the grieving we have to do concerning death. Death is something we have to deal with in our lives. Friends, relatives, especially parents, people in the family. We can't avoid it. It's difficult for all of us. But once we can at least come to the fact that we have to accept it and deal with it, it makes it a lot easier for ourselves and others. One of the things we don't do as human beings too well is we don't grieve well. We have a tendency to not want to deal with it, to deny it, to push it over. That's why having the funeral service is so important. It brings us to the reality: my mother is dead. She's not coming back. We have to bury her. She's not with us. Why should I should have said something more to her before she died. I should have been kinder to her in my life. Why did she not show more love to me? All these questions keep pouring into our lives, one after another. We just can't do them in one day. It's overwhelming when we lose somebody that we're close to, and to be able to kind of deal with all that. So the grieving process is not only an emotional process, it's a mental, it's also a spiritual process that we need to deal with. Men very often will do their grieving for the wife they lost by remarrying way too soon. Or they'll say, gee, wasn't he tough? He didn't shed a tear about his wife's death. Well, maybe he didn't, but we have to say, where is the pain and suffering going? We have a tendency to, give people that don't shed tears at a funeral for their wife or their mother or family like they're some sort of a strong person. Not to cry is not a strength. It's a weakness not to be able. And of course, this is complicated by cultures and the way we've been brought up now for centuries. But anyway, we have to look at it in the way that I'm talking about it today. We need to grieve when somebody dies and we lose somebody, whether our relationship ended on a bad note or a good note. we still need to deal with it. And one of the things we have to realize, if we ended up with a bad note, and there's a lot of things we haven't said to Mom before she died, and a lot of things we haven't resolved, we have to realize the dead have no more problems. They've got it all together. They can listen to us, and we can tell them and cry, Mom, I didn't do this. I'm sorry I hurt you. What about all these other things that we didn't? The dead have no problem. We can resolve things with a dead mother a lot faster when she's dead than when she's alive. It doesn't take it away. It's a process that takes a long time. People want to get through it very fast. Let's get the funeral short, have that get together very fast, get Mom or Dad into the grave, and then we move on. We move on, but we also move on with the realization that my mother's gone. She's not in the family. I need to still continue to deal with her and talk with her and resolve the things that I have there. I need to remember God's forgiveness for me and my mother who's willing to forgive me and to deal with that. So this is an important aspect. Grieving is never easy, but grieving can't be avoided. So many people go into depression after the death of somebody, which is somewhat normal. But when it continues and continues on, there we have to realize this is not sadness or grieving anymore. This is a depression that a person is stuck in. Many, many people I've had to deal with on situations like this, where there was so much unresolved baggage that they had with that mother that they didn't deal with, that they really had to deal with it in counseling and trying to make that mother real in the session, that she's okay, you're not okay. Forgiveness, self-forgiveness, we need to realize all of that. It's important. We are Christians, and these are the things we want to make it work for us. People need to be able to talk about the deceased, what went on, what could have gone on, things in the past. We laugh, we make jokes, we cry, we get angry, we are disappointed. These are all the things that continue with grieving. They just overwhelm us, and there's an avalanche of them. After the burial, we have to go on with our lives, but we carry with us a certain amount of unresolved grieving. It'll take weeks, it'll take months, it'll take a long time. People feel that after a few months, all of a sudden they get a bad day, and all of a sudden I'm depressed. I start crying about Mom who died. That's normal. Thank God it comes up, because it's surfing itself in this person's life. This man has to grieve for his mother. He has to go through what's coming up. It's an important thing. She's an important person. She's not gone forever. You'll see her again, but she still is in our life. The dead are with us at all times, but we have to be able to deal with them and not bury them and put the dirt over and go on. There's a lot of things that when people die, that we have to go over with them and deal with them. And this is what helps us in the grieving process to heal and to be able to move on. And, the permission to grieve is one of the things I always try to give to the people. Listen to the tears of others and the sacrament of presence to the people who are grieving and being there. Not just hit and run at the viewing and then they don't hear from us again. How about 2 weeks later giving a call? How about a month later sending another card? This is the way we need to be able to be a people who's sensitive and to the grieving people in our lives, and not only for ourselves, because anything we do for another, we're going to feel that healing also. So faith does not take away our grieving. Faith helps us to march through the grieving and to have hope that we'll see this person before, and to resolve the many unfinished things that we have of people who have died. They don't need it, but we need it to be able to deal with them. And also the fact of a divorce. When people divorce one another, it's a major loss emotionally, spiritually, financially. It's a ton loss for the children, whether they're young or old, and especially the older ones, because they have children. And how do you deal with the children when they see this happening? It's a disruptive thing for the family, for friends, for society, for the church. Marriage should never have been, we will say, but it did happen, and there are children, and we need to kind of realize we have to be able to work with both people and realize to help them through and to move on. Then it comes up with the fact of who in the family is against us and our friends that we had before. All these things need to be dealt with. It becomes quite complex. And then with the children too, with the divorce and all the different ways we have of, living with dad for half of the week and then mom the next. Is that the best? So many things don't go right with the children. The young children especially suffer because the parents can't get their act together and deal with the fact that they're so selfish and so angry with one another that they don't realize, hey, we've got to be there for the children. We've got to do the best we can in a bad situation. We have to be there for them. And we also have to help them to grieve the fact that the family is not together anymore, and to grieve also that the family we once knew is not there anymore, and that as God is walking with us, and that we have to deal with the loss. It's an emotional and spiritual journey, and there's a lot of disappointment, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger that has to be dealt with, and we have to be able to talk about it, to get counseling. One of the things everybody wants the lawyers when there's a divorce. The lawyers are important. What's more important is dealing with the emotional, spiritual, and physical pain that people go through when they break up. It affects not only the husband and wife, the children, and all the parents and families. People are torn apart. It hurts society. It hurts the church. But there is hope. People can get through it. They can move beyond, but they have to get help. People, after a divorce, not seeking counseling is just so idiotic because they carry so much baggage with them that they have to resolve. As I said in an earlier talk, sometimes the men will remarry within a year, and because they don't have the care of the children as much as the mother is hesitant to marry that fast. But remarriage is not the issue. The issue is healing from the divorce. How did this marriage fail? How did I fail? How am I healing? And can I make a sound choice to remarry or not to remarry? These are the important questions that people have to ask, not these questions of who will I date or where am I going to go to find another mate. These are not the questions. These are things we have to take care of later on. The first thing is our healing of ourselves. If we as parents heal, the children will heal. If we don't heal, then the children do not heal. And people around us will never heal because we are not healing. So we have to move and take control of our lives at a time like this. Just to repeat, 60% of second marriages fail. They fail because people have not resolved the issues of the first marriage and learned about themselves and learned how they failed, not how the other person failed. Any idiot can tell you how the other person failed. How did I fail in this marriage? How am I going to heal? How am I going to move on? Because when I move on as a parent, my children move on also. So these are the important things in the brokenness of our society that we have today. And one of the things I know that will help, that if we have more education for our people who are marrying, like I have been able to provide in the past 20 years of the weddings I witnessed, that in the past 20 years, 50 weddings, I can say there were only 4 divorces. Why? That's a small number because the preparation that I gave them had to do with a lot that I'm talking about today. And they were able not to divorce, but to move on because they had the skills to be able to deal with their healing and a deeper understanding of relationship, of being able to integrate the Christian teaching that Jesus has given us, which is certainly going to heal and help us to move on and grow together as a couple, not only emotionally but spiritually, which we can hand on to their own children, and these children will be able to have good marriages. Why? Because they saw their parents live a good marriage together. Thank you very much.
In life, we are not alone. We live with and among people. We constantly enter into contact and relationship with others. Some of these relationships are very formal and superficial, but some are very deep and intimate. How do relationships work? We can all easily relate with those relationships that have been wounded, which are sometimes even bleeding. Father Martin Padovani, SVD, has written a book called Healing Wounded Relationships. It is the result of his many years of work as a marriage counselor. He deals with some of the very simple but pertinent topics like communications, listening, intimacy, forgiveness, reconciliation, and dealing with anxiety and fear. And of course, a very practical question: how do you make a marriage work? You will surely be enriched by this book. You should get it for yourself, or maybe get a copy for a relative or a friend. Be blessed by this book and improve your relationships.
Call the number on the screen or email us to get your copy. You can also place your order by visiting our website. Do it today.
Let us pray. May the Lord bless us and keep us. May he let his face shine down upon us and be gracious to us. May he look upon us with kindness and give us his peace and healing. And may Almighty God bless all of us, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.